All right, today we're going to talk about using a IDE. So in this course, it's probably different than most courses you've had here. We don't use any IDE. Maybe you can use Visual Studio Code for this, but that's a little different than an integrated development environment. That's more of a code editor. But it provides some of the functionality as well. So IDEs provide a way of organizing projects and makes running, compiling, all that a little bit easier. So we're going to review that. But first, I want to talk about the assignment with the bank account and transactions. And I don't think I deducted for this, but many of you had an attribute in the account for balance. And then you either incremented or decremented that based on whether it was a deposit or a withdrawal. Many of you also had an array list of transactions. And we didn't cover this, so I couldn't really consider that wrong, but I think there's a better way to do it. In that way, and let me explain to you why it's a better way. I never want you to think that like I'm saying it's a better way just because it's my way of doing it. You know, if I say something's a better way, it's because I have reasons for it. I want to go over those now. All right. First of all, if you have a balance and an array list of transactions, it is possible through bugs to have inconsistent results. Now, I know you're saying you tested it and so on, and you made sure that the balance was always correct and matched up what the sum of the transactions would be. Yes, you did for your code, but there may be other people that use those classes as well. And they may not be as vigilant in testing. And it's possible through a bug to have the balance set to one thing, and that didn't match up the sum of all the transactions. What is an account, after all? An account is a series of transactions. I mean, there's other information about it, but there is basically it's a series of transactions. You have deposits, withdrawals. You might have service charges or overdraft fees or interest or whatever, but it's basically a set of transactions. They either increment or decrement the balance. So I would suggest that a better way to do this would be to not have the balance as a running total in the account. And instead, do something similar to what we did with a order and pizza. When we wanted to get the cost of an order, we looped through all the pizzas for that order and summed them up and got the total amount for the order. What I would suggest is have an array list of transactions, and then you can loop through those transactions. You can have an array list of transactions. And again, transaction would be probably an abstract class, right? That would have a bunch of abstract methods, everything that you would expect to be on any kind of transaction, an amount, a description, a date, and so on. And you'd be able to put withdrawals, deposits, and miscellaneous into that array list because they would all be transactions. They would all inherit from transactions. When you wanted a balance in, you would loop through all the transactions and get the total of it. The advantage to that is, again, you're not going to get inconsistent results. All right, it could be wrong, but it's going to be consistently wrong. And again, not having data stored in two places is a fundamental tenet of good software development. Now, you might say, what about a big bank that has millions of customers and they each have hundreds of transactions? Well, they may do some things to expedite that process other than summing up all the transactions. But for our purposes, I would say the better way would be to sum up the transactions, because you're not going to have that much of a volume of transactions in this particular case. So that is probably the pure, better way to come up with the balance of an account. Another way of saying that is a balance is a derived attribute. Yes, a bank account has a balance, but it's derived by adding up all of the transactions. This also is consistent with a principle of object-oriented development, which is encapsulation. And in encapsulation, everything about a given object should be contained in that object. And again, some of you, the way you did it doesn't sort of violate this principles. Other of you, if you accumulated the balance and then set the balance in the account, that sort of did violate that. But again, by having everything about the transaction, about the account contained within the account, it's responsible for knowing its balance. And it can determine that by looping through the transactions. Okay, now onward and upward into IDE land. So the one we're going to be using is Apache's Netbeans. And one of the reasons I chose that is some of you might be going on to the University of Akron software development degree program, bachelor's degree program. And that is the IDE that they use in their Java 2 class. So I thought might as well use the same as they do. All right, so I'm going to take a project like we've had so far, like we've done so far, and I'm going to import it into Netbeans. And then we'll take a look in Netbeans and we'll figure out how to do things. I'm going to download this, put it on the desktop. Expand it out. This is our high-low game. This is high-low game converted into a application. So let's go into Netbeans. Hope it's installed. It is. And I'm going to create a new project. You would do this if you already had the code and you just wanted to make a project within Netbeans for it. And there's some advantages of doing that. So I'm going to go up here and say I want a new project. And I'm going to pick this option, Java with Maven. Maven is a way of compiling and keeping the classes organized and handling, compiling and building everything within the application. So as it says, simple application using Maven. You're recommended to begin here if you're new to Java. Let's actually get a better definition of Maven than the one I gave. These are the things it provides. Makes the build process easy, provides a uniform build system, provide quality project information, and encourage better development practices. Those are all the things that can be done with Maven. So I'm going to create that project. I'm going to call it high-low game. The project location, it has a default location. I'm going to put it on the desktop so it's easy to see. The group ID is the URL associated typically with your organization. All right. This is sometimes called a namespace, and we typically use what's called reverse URL notation. What that means is this shows my company.com, but backwards. The reason for this is if you ever are using classes that you import from another organization, this group ID will help you keep things straight. So if you had two objects with similar or the same name, you'll be able to specify exactly which one you wanted by putting in the group ID when you import the classes. So it's going to put in a package called .com, my company, high-low game. All right. Now, we don't work for mycompany.com, so I'm going to put in edu.lorraine CCC. And then I could put in even more if I wanted to, CISS.Zellers. And this gives me the name of the package as well. We're going to put the package in once we import it. So I put that in, and I have my project. And it creates other files along with it, and it gives us a sort of dummy class. We're not going to use that. We're going to substitute our classes in there. So I'm going to copy this package, and I am going to delete this class. And I'm going to go in and move my classes into where the project lives, which is my desktop, high-low game, SRC, main, Java, edu. These subfolders all represent potential packages in our application. We'll take a closer look when we get back into Netbeans. So I'm going to copy all my classes into there. If I get back into Netbeans, you'll see it now has those in there. And they're under the folder that matches the package name, .edu, .lorraineccc, .ciss, If I used classes that Harms developed, for example, I might have a package, I might import a package in here of edu lorraineccc.ciss.harms. I'm going to go into each one of these classes, and I'm going to enter the package name. Oops. Now, can I run this? Let's try. I'm going to run this, and it's doing the build. It may be downloading some packages that Maven needs. And it gives me an error down here. And the error is, if we look at this, main method was not found in class. We need to identify which class has the main method in it that we want to call when we run this application. Well, that is high-low GUI. So I'm going to go up here, go into properties, and under run, I'm going to specify that the class that has the main method that we want is, it gives you a choice of all of them that do have the main method. I want to run the high-low GUI. So that's the main class of this application. So we go and run this. Now it's smart enough, it knows where to begin, and we can pick high, low, 7 and play it. Now, I did a little bit different in this case. I just displayed the number as opposed to displaying an image. Displaying images, there's a lot of complexities involved with that. So I just decided to skip displaying the image for this introduction. You're welcome to work through it and see if you can get that to happen. But know that I will, you don't need to do that for your rock, paper, scissors game. Now let's go and look and see what files this built. Target is where it sends the built things. Classes. Classes are going to be in EDU, Lorraine CCC, CISS, Zellers, high-low game. That's where all the classes are. For the Maven, that's classes. One thing I'm not seeing here, and I'll have to look at settings, is I was expecting to see a jar file. Let me look at settings to see why a jar file wasn't created, and we'll create a jar file. Let me go to settings again. Under build, compile, file on save, Java platform we're using. Hey, I'm not sure why it did not build a jar. Let me look out on disk and see if I can see the jar. No. Outside. Properties. Packaging jar. Check build jar. I don't see that option. Well, there we go. If you run it, apparently it doesn't do a build first. You have to build it and then you get the jar. Now, what is the jar? The jar is a Java archive file, and we could use this to actually deploy to someone. So this week and next week, we're in general, besides talking about the IDE, we're talking about deploying. And one way of deploying would be to give this jar as part of an install program or whatever, and allow people to run it. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is not going to work. If I click on it, I should be able to run the application from it, but I'm not. And the reason for that is we do not have a manifest file. What is a manifest file, you ask? Well, let me go and open up one of the other examples to show you a manifest file. You'll need to add this file into your project. Now, this is already a Netbeans project. I look here, I can see the folders for that. So I can go into Netbeans. And choose a project. No, I clicked add. I don't want to open a project. File, new project, open project.
Is this IDE you want us to use?
Yes. I don't know if you are interested in the University of Akron program, but they use this in their advanced Java class.
Is there a reason, if you don't mind me asking?
Is there a reason that Akron uses that? I don't
Or like IntelliJ or Eclipse?
I use it because a lot of our students go to the University of Akron program and they use Netbeans.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it did something different than those two.
It probably doesn't. I'm not familiar with every single IDE out there, but I would imagine that they do pretty much the same thing. Let's see. Notice we get that little symbol indicating that it is a Netbeans project. And open it. And here's our project. And manifest is the manifest. Oh, this is not my day. Let me close this and let me create a manifest in the other project to show you how to do that. So close this one. And let's create a manifest. One problem with lecturing like this is I don't use Netbeans on a daily basis. So when new versions come out, sometimes things look a little different. Find results for Netbeans, create a manifest.
I just have a quick question for
Yeah.
you. Is there any type of app or game website you would recommend for Java? For example, like web development has Mimo, and there's another one out there where you can just keep practicing it over and over again.
Right.
Is there like an app or website that kind of gives you a little bit of understanding and constant use? That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any off the top of my head.
Okay.
I see. The manifest is not a separate file, it's part of a POM file. So let's look at the POM file. So everything in this build section is part of the manifest, or is used to create the manifest. So let's go and put that in this one's PLM file. And we can put in name of our package. Sellers. And this will create, this one should create a manifest, and we want to call high-low GUI. So now we can create a build, and we'll see in there. It opens and runs. We have a deployable jar. Now there's other cool things that we can do. We can generate JavaDocs. What are JavaDocs? Well, chances are if you were having trouble with something, let's say you had trouble with local date class. You type in Java local date. You'll come to a page that looks like this. This effectively is JavaDocs for the Java system. It shows a class, it shows the inheritance, interfaces that it has, attributes that it has, methods, static methods, instance methods, concrete methods, and somewhere it probably shows constructors. Did I miss that? And then details about those. So we can generate this kind of documentation about our own projects. And we can even do better than that. We can put explanatory comments in our code that get included in the documentation. So where do we do that? Let's go into this resource that will tell us how to do that. Creating comments for JavaDocs. And down here it will show us that we can put a comment before a method, before a class, or whatever. As long as it's in this format, it will be displayed in JavaDocs. So I can, for dice, for roll, didn't copy the right thing. And we can say this randomly chooses a value from 1 to 6 and assigns to face value property returns it. Okay. Now, how do we generate? We can go and save all this. How do we generate JavaDocs? If we go under here, there's an option, generate JavaDoc. And it will go and do that. And when you're done, you will have in Target your site the JavaDocs. So let's open up the index first. This shows a class summary of all the classes in our application, or in the package rather. So we can look at that and we can see what attributes they have, see what methods they have, and so on. So if we look under DICE, it shows us the documentation for the role method. I could put a similar one for each of these functions. One thing that I probably should do more of in this class is comment the code. That's something that you want to put into practice, is to document the code. And the nice thing is you can give this to someone and they don't even have to see the code to know how to interact with it. They have a summary of the constructors. And we could do this for the methods. So this one, we might say something like, returns face value without setting it. Generate JavaDocs again. This will provide us the documentation. It's not done yet. So maybe I didn't create this correct, or no, I'll change that. But you get the basic idea of this. So that's one thing that the IDE does in addition to all the other things that it will do for you, like give you the IntelliSense and allow you to run the code, you know, without manually doing it for the command line. I thought it was important for students in programming to have one course at least where they don't have the benefit of an IDE. I don't know if this is the old man in me coming out as like, well, back when I was a kid, this is how I wrote programs, which isn't even true because I used punch cards when I first started to program. But still, I think you gain a deeper understanding by doing it sort of on a nuts and bolts level, just from the command line. All right, we will talk next week about other ways to deploy our code, because creating JavaDocs is just, or not JavaDocs, creating jar files is just one way that you can create, make your application deployable, that someone else could take it and run it. JavaDocs, again, the one thing that is sort of missing from this class is we work on very isolated sort of things. And therefore, we don't really see what happens when a lot of people are working with a set of classes. So some of the things like JavaDocs may not seem important to you, but they are important when you work in larger projects. I'm going to try one more thing. Maybe I forgot to save it. That's why it's not doing that. No. I'm not sure.
First the actual file, the file place where you clicked on it.
Try building it again. Generating the Java.
Refresh this.
Or you mean go in here and refresh it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's hard to say. I don't know the answer, so I can't tell you that that's not the answer.
Do a different index. Is that supposed to be there? The index that said all, and then you had an index that said just regular index.
That's a good question. Oh, this shows us everything. A little dictionary. It's cool. So I'm giving up why it's not showing that. But again, do put these in. That's a requirement for your next assignment to have some comments show up in JavaDoc. So what you'll do is you'll take and you'll create a runnable jar. You'll know that it worked if you can click on the jar file and it opens up. That will require you with Maven to insert these lines. And you'll see that in the example that I have that says Maven with manifest information, something like that. So you're looking at pom.xml file. In this example, the archive. No, this one. Netbeans project that contains manifest information. All right, that's all I had for today. Next week, we'll talk about more deployment possibilities for your Java classes. We'll either see you in lab or we'll see you next week. Have a good Thanksgiving.